everyone. Raise your hand if you believe yourself to be an individual. Now raise your hand if you believe yourself to be part of a collective. Now raise your hand if you believe it's possible to be both an individual and part of a collective. I think it is. Actually, I believe that collectives exist because of individuals. The grand we is actually a bunch of little human I's. In order for collectives to change for the positive, individuals need to change for the positive. Now, how do we facilitate individual change? We must start with our own person. Basically, be the change we want to see as a practice. This idea isn't new, but I don't think it's been given the thought that it deserves. The first step is knowing and accepting ourselves. This is one of the hardest things to do, but it's also one of the most necessary. We're all different, and we live with other people who like us and who don't. But knowing and accepting ourselves is a fundamental step to creating collective grace, acceptance, and coexistence. Changing ourselves equals changing the world. In cultivating these virtues personally, we begin to cultivate them for others as well. When this happens, authentic love starts to naturally blossom. I can tell you honestly that as I'm saying the word love, I'm groaning inside, and I'm sure some of you are too. Elie, isn't it time that we give up on love? Isn't it just endless pain? I can't love. My heart's been broken too many times. I think all of these thoughts come from a distorted view of love. Love is not a product of relationships. Relationships are a product of our ability to love. Love is also not just an emotion we feel for others. It's our ability to feel and embrace emotion. As a photographer, I find it helpful to look at it this way. Love is the aperture through which we feel and experience life. Valerie Carr wrote a book called See No Stranger. In it, she writes, "Love is not a feeling, it's a decision. It's not something you experience, it's something you choose to do." What I like about this is the internalization of love. It's not something that's beyond us, it's a product of us. Love is a choice that we make, and it's hard. Raise your hand if you ever felt that the best thing to do within any kind of relationship was to continue loving someone, but you still felt the urge to leave them. Me too. Love can be a hard choice, and the externalization of it makes it even harder. To love also does not mean that you always feel good. It means that even when you don't feel good, you stay. You listen to how you feel, but you stay. This is different than staying in a toxic situation. I'm suggesting that relationships of any kind, including the best ones, contain hard and easy emotions. Another definition is that love is our ability to empty ourselves for anything else. And this is not disregarding physical intimacy, emotional intimacy, or any other kind of affection we feel towards others. In my life, I've been through heartbreak, and through that heartbreak, I've come to the realization that I have two options. I can love myself enough to take care of and nurture the pain that I feel, or I can be dismissive of myself and therefore others. To love is to feel everything, and in that embrace of feeling everything, we become more open, sensitive, and caring individuals. So basically, when we let all our emotions in, we become more open, sensitive, and caring, and this positively influences our relationships. Our individual actions shape the world. As I said, I've been through heartbreak, and through that, I've learned. I'm grateful for it. I've learned that love does not come from others, it comes from me. Other people can love me, but if I'm not open to it, I'm not going to let anyone else in. if I'm not open to how I'm feeling, I'm not going to have the presence and attentiveness to develop love from the inside out. So, basically, listening to pain equals empowerment of ourselves and others. Now, I realized these things after experiencing mental illness for the first time and realizing that I could think of it in a way that would improve my relationship with myself and others for the positive. My 12th and 13th years were some of the hardest of my life. I needed to get used to change fast. When I was 12, I was diagnosed with bipolar type 2 disorder. This was after I started to feel myself change, not just because I was 12 years old. No one else around me seemed to be changing like I was. I stopped going to school. I stopped being able to take care of myself. And this led me to a psych ward when I was 13. And I'm not claiming that my story is different than any others. Depression is one of the most common symptoms and problems. I have learned from those years, though. For a while, pain was something that was a disease, something that made me different. And I am different, but so is everyone else. We're all unique individuals who feel pain because we want what's right for ourselves, and we all need different things. The pain that I felt during those 2 years was not trying to teach me that I'm diseased, that I'm different because I'm bipolar. The depression was a sign that I needed to figure out who I was before I drowned in inauthenticity. We only go towards a change we've made in ourselves first, whether we realize it or not. I didn't know this at the time, but those 2 years taught me how to transform the most suffering I'd ever experienced into empowerment and prove to me that loving others most definitely comes from within. The sensitivity and awareness that arose from those 2 years taught me how to see life from a clearer perspective and allowed me to provide for myself and others more space, tolerance, and grace. Another thing I learned is that we don't need to put effort into impacting others. We do that just by interacting. The real effort comes from choosing what attitude to have on a moment-to-moment basis. What if we lived by this and applied this kind of intention in all of our interactions? A common name for this is living in response, not reaction. Thich Nhat Hanh, a late spiritual teacher and writer, wrote in his book, Being Peace, "If we are happy, if we are peaceful, we can smile and blossom like a flower, and everyone in our society and our family will benefit from our peace." This means that whatever we choose for our internal state will be the seeds we plant in our lives. It starts in here. This is somewhat of an ideal, but it's not only attainable to strive for, it's needed. When our sensitivity embraces everything in our experience, we begin to consciously influence the collective. One way to find a state of response is a therapeutic technique called internal family systems, or IFS. The way my therapist described this to me is that pain that reappears is basically like a child with a skinned knee. When we're children, we don't have the utility or the knowledge to take care of our own skin knees. We go to our caretakers, and we need help. Ideally, the caretaker would be attentive and compassionate. This doesn't always happen, though. When no one can help, the pain stays, and a part of us is alienated. When this happens, we rarely feel it until we feel safe to, but it does impact our relationships. We co-create relationships from an intention of avoidance and practice numbing through them. IFS is about leaning into that pain and taking care of it in necessary ways. This is an example of one's internal impacting the external, one's internal state impacting one's relationships. When I started to practice IFS, I experienced light bulb moment after light bulb moment, realizing that I don't have to run away from my pain like I did after the diagnosis. If I see depression and pain as teachers, I will become more open, sensitive, and caring. This caused me to become a more understanding, brave, and kind person. And this all came from an increase in authenticity. I've gathered that in authenticity, one isn't afraid to show they care, one stands up for themselves and others, and one listens to their own needs. Jon Kabat-Zinn, a mindfulness teacher, says we can't create or project an authentic version of ourselves for others to see. The feeling of realness and wholeness that we yearn for can't be found outside of ourselves. A commitment to authenticity equals a commitment, an increase in clarity in decision-making and freedom to choose how we express. Authenticity is loving because it helps us embody the change we want to see. I noticed that a direct product of IFS therapy is increased authenticity. In being committed to authenticity, one is committed to being truthful and open with people. One says, I am not afraid to choose how others perceive me. It's out of my control how others perceive me. And others deserve to see who I really am, and I deserve better than to hide myself from the world. In embracing how we feel, in embracing everything of how we feel, we are more authentic, and we begin to consciously influence the collective. Changing ourselves equals changing the world. Just like self-acceptance and self-awareness, courageous authenticity is one of the hardest things to cultivate, but it's also one of the most needed. In his book, Consolations, David White claims, being truthful and authentic involves heartfelt participation with life and choosing the consequences of our deepest feelings. Authenticity is loving because it is an act of very truthful love. If we cultivate these virtues individually, the collective and collectives of people are already going in a positive direction. What you do matters. Your choices shape the world. It all comes down to 3 vulnerable questions. What am I creating? What do I want to create? And how deeply am I willing to feel in order to create it? Thank you.